GSMC Sports Network. Before we get into our second segment of today's show, I would like to remind you guys yet again that if you do feel so inclined, please consider leaving a tip or donation at the link gsmc.cloud. This will change in the future as I become a live show, but as of right now, any tips, donations, or even questions, comments, or concerns about the show should all be directed to gsmc.cloud. It is greatly appreciated. Without further ado, let's get into perhaps the most intriguing, controversial segment of the day, if you will. Because this guy is a hybrid player through and through. A player like we haven't seen in college football. And I know that he's going to receive a lot of controversy this season for how he plays, how his coach plays him, how people perceive him in terms of his draft stock. But all in all, this guy, when he does play, at least on the offensive side of the ball, where he'll be most valued in fantasy college football, he is perhaps the best player we've seen doing this two-way kind of thing in college football, and that is, of course, Travis Hunter. Now, a lot of people might not like that I'm profiling Travis Hunter because, after all, he has played more defensively than offensively in recent years, and he's kind of viewed as more of a gadget guy, a surplus to all the talent Colorado has at the receiver position. But at the end of the day, if you can't exploit Travis Hunter for when Colorado is in these Big 12 shootouts, now that they are in the Big 12, I think that Travis Hunter could be a potent flex option for you in terms of fantasy college football. So let's look at his stats. As a receiver, 57 catches, 721 yards, 5 TDs, which in that Colorado setup is not bad by any means. You had a lot of variation in this Colorado offense. It didn't all go through Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Edwards last year. And it's not going to go through Dylan Edwards anymore because he's gone away. But there will be moments where Travis Hunter is really intriguing. For example, let's look at his best game. His best game on the offensive side of the ball was against Stanford. We all saw that game, where he also had some struggles on defense. So maybe that correlation could come into play in how you decide to use him. He had 13 catches, 140 yards, 2 TDs. His worst game was also against Colorado State. That was another famous game from last year for Colorado, where he only had 1.1 points. 2 catches, 21 yards, and 0 touchdowns. But now, here's how I view this Colorado wide receiver room. I'm going to go through all three of these guys, and they all have a very integral role that I can view them playing. You bring in transfer Will Shepard from Vanderbilt. From what I hear about this kid is that he is someone who is going to be a savvy route runner. He's going to be more of like a wide receiver. He can play in the slot, maybe in the perimeter, but at the end of the day, he's going to be the intelligent IQ kind of receiver that we often talk about. The guy who can get open, understands situational football at its finest, and at the end of the day, will really add value and depth to this receiver room. Then you talk about Jimmy Horn. Jimmy Horn is also a very versatile player. Perhaps he plays in the slot even more because he's also a very savvy route runner. If you saw him last year, you know that he's very intelligent. He was one of Shedeur Sanders' favorite targets last year outside of Travis Hunter. So Jimmy Horn, he can also be a vertical threat. Look for more verticality from this Colorado offense, especially in a Big 12 that really values these shootout games, and I expect for Shedeur Sanders to be throwing the ball early and often downfield. And then we talk about Travis Hunter. What I see in Travis Hunter is really dependent on how Coach Prime plays his minutes. If he does profile more as a cornerback on the defensive side of football, if that's where Coach Prime places him, then that's kind of reducing what he can do offensively, because at the end of the day, Travis Hunter is perhaps the best deep threat on this Colorado wide receiver team core. And so, given that Travis Hunter adds so much value both offensively and defensively, it really is a balance here. Do you want Travis Hunter going more vertical offensively, risking his potential in terms of, say, man-to-man coverage in the defensive aspect of his game? Or do you really value Travis Hunter as a guy who profiles as that deep threat in your offense, coming at the risk of him playing less minutes on the defensive side of the ball where he is in fact your best player? And all of these questions really need to be answered in some way or form, because the Big 12 is an entirely different animal than the Pac-12, where you know that parity gets you far. In the Pac-12, Travis Hunter's skills were anomalous because Colorado did not have the depth and experience needed to beat teams like Oregon, Washington, Utah. Now that they're in the Big 12, they understand that the Big 12 is in a position where any team views any other team as someone that they can compete against. It's not a league where you have this set top guy. You can go in there and compete. And with Travis Hunter being such a wild card as he is, I think there will be games where it makes more sense for Colorado to start him offensively. And in those games, expect him to put up a lot of huge numbers. He may not get as many catches as we saw, but he is going to add value in terms of what those catches mean. And in fantasy college football, when you're looking at guys to fill out your roster, and you're looking at players who profile as either number 2 or number 3 receivers, and they're on teams that you expect to kind of be in the middle of the pack in their respective conferences, I think that's where the most value comes into play. Because say you're looking at guys on USC, let's say, or in the Big Ten, Washington, or something of that nature, and you're really focusing on, well, which guy profiles someone who will be in a lot of shootouts, maybe not win them all, but can get me a couple catches, a couple yards, a couple more touchdowns that I need to round out my team. Travis Hunter certainly feels like that guy. Now the caveat to all this is, in recent rumors that have been surfacing surrounding Colorado and Travis Hunter, he has profiled more as a cornerback, and that's where all the skepticism about why I view him as such a valuable fantasy asset comes into play. Because in terms of fantasy, defense doesn't win you anything. It's the offense you value. And also remember, Travis Hunter is more injury prone than people may think, playing both ways. He missed 3 games with a lacerated kidney last year. It was a very harrowing injury for him, and in some games, he did not look like his former self. And so, it's all about balance here. It's all about understanding that Colorado knows what they have in him, but they don't necessarily want to push it over the edge, because Travis Hunter is certainly someone you don't want to fall off the cliff. He's someone that you want to stay the course with. And staying the course means guaranteeing that he's one of your most healthy players on the roster. And when I look at Colorado and their schedule, they have some good games. I believe they play Kansas State at home. That should be an interesting game. All of these games, they're playing teams that feel like they should win the Big 12, but know that this team in Colorado can play spoiler. Those are dangerous games, because those are the games I'm highlighting if you're someone who looks ahead to find out what matchups work best for the players you drafted. That's really where Hunter comes into play as the wild card, because he's someone that you really have to do your research on, delve deep into what you know about and what you hear about coming from that Colorado camp. Because at the end of the day, if I'm getting into the latter stages of a draft, and I feel like I don't necessarily have a receiver that has that level of parity to them, that has that level of understanding to them, and Travis Hunter, I could easily pull up his schedule, pick the games where I feel like he could be potent in, and then draft him based off those games. Because in terms of elite college receivers, you always think of guys who will actually get that significant amount of A, targets, B, playing time, and C, production. So you know those players much better than you know the guys who really are. And that's not the case with Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter really came onto the scene because of his dual threat ability on both sides of the ball. But the value that he adds, both in real life and in fantasy, stems from your understanding of him. Because it feels very apt to have skepticism about what Travis Hunter brings on the offensive side of the ball. Seeing as to how Colorado is addressing that wide receiver room, this could come back to hit me by saying that Travis Hunter adds a lot of value offensively. But if you're Colorado, wouldn't you also be kind of like a fantasy manager, picking and choosing the places where Travis Hunter makes more sense on the offensive side of the ball? Because the bottom line is, they're going to be in games that you think you can win. Where you're late in the third or fourth quarter, and you'll be like, well, I think we can win this thing. You have to take advantage of the wild card you have, and that wild card is Travis Hunter. And at the end of the day, I would be kind of foolish to not at least tell you that there will be games where Travis Hunter will be valued. That'll just about do it for this segment. Coming next, we transition to a true number one receiver, a guy whose connection with his quarterback is incredible to behold, and looking to carry it over as well into the Big 12. You don't want to miss this segment. Coming up next.
Looking for your daily fix